Hello, my friends. Thank you for tuning in and listening to the next podcast. For those of you who are watching this, excuse the white stuff you see all over the wall. We actually just patched a hole in our wall, so that's all drywall mud that's drying. So ignore that. For those on the podcast, you win. You don't have to deal with looking at it. This week, actually, before I get into this, quick shout out to one of our friends on the Facebook page who actually listens to the podcast, James, who actually suggested the topic for this week. And I thought it was a super interesting topic. And it wasn't interesting because it's unique. It's interesting because I have talked about it before. I've talked about design intent and how we come up with our ideas, but what I have not talked about is, I haven't really gone into in depth. So I want to take this episode of the podcast to really go in depth and kind of nail this off. What this is not, if you are starting a clothing line or if you are interested in graphic design or work like that, this is not a how-to manual. This is not the tried and true. This is what you need to do. Make this design, this design, this design, put it on a shirt, use these colors, use this color shirt, sell it, you'll become a millionaire. That's not what this is at all. I don't consider myself an artistic person. I don't consider myself a graphic designer. I think that I listen to people very well, and that's ultimately where I come up with my ideas. So, with that being said, let's dive right into this, and if that's why you're here, I'm sorry, but this probably won't help you. But it should give you some great insight onto how to actually come up with your own designs and how we do it, how I do it. So before we even get into this, I'm not the only one who does design work for WeArePR. I do a bulk majority of it. I would say I probably do 85 to 90% of the design work, and then my wife, Laura, does a majority of the rest, and then our team members actually, whenever they have ideas, they'll sketch it out, or they'll text it to us, or something like that, and we'll go from there. So the number one job that I have as a designer and as someone who owns this line is to create unique items that you literally cannot get anywhere else. And that's one of the cool things, is that I feel like with our line, what I try to do is all of the shirts, all the sayings, everything that you see has at one point or another in my life has been a factor. Okay, so the only thing that I use for motivation and the only place that I pull my sources and all that from is literally, I take a mirror and I look at my life and see what am I going through. I mean, our biggest design to date, our best-selling design to date has been the Shatter Expectations. And I'll probably use that as an example. But that, I mean, I didn't go online and look up graffiti, or I didn't go online and look up and listen to anybody or go watch people to get inspiration. It all just came from within. And since that creative nature does not come secondhand to me, it takes a little bit more for me to actually get it done. So at the very beginning, it all starts with a concept. So we know that we're kind of in this powerlifting demographic. Most of the stuff I put on shirts is all stuff that I faced, and the cool thing with working out is that just about anything that applies in the gym, think of anything that applies there, whether it's to push harder, to keep moving past your failure, how to progressively get better at lifts, add more weight. Every single one of those lessons can be applied to the rest of your life. I just think the gym is so fascinating because everything that you learn and everything you're taught inside of those four walls, you can take and apply it to a business and make a winning business model from that. You can apply it to your life and become a better person. There's just so many cool things about the gym, and that's I pulled a lot of stuff from that, and that's kind of where we're at. So even though that we are more of an athletic clothing line, we don't just make things specific for the gym. We do have some stuff that's kind of pushed more towards the gym side, like the women's leggings and stuff like that. But all the phrases, the only thing I'm going to worry about today and on this podcast is just the phrases. So let's just use Shatter Expectations from the very beginning. That was my second design, I think. It may not have been. It was in my first release I came up with the phrase. My first release had 3 different phrases, I think. and they all applied to what I was going through. So in the very beginning of the line, I really didn't know exactly what I was doing, which is exactly where the Never Stop, Dream, Work, Achieve design came from. That one actually came to me very quickly. It really just came to me as in I realized that I kept trying to make screens. I kept trying to figure out the whole screen printing process and all the little oh my goodness. Why can't I say the word right now? Nope, I'm not giving up. Can't say the word. All the little minute details. If you know what word I'm trying to say, please let me know. But every single little detail, all the minor details, I could not nail it down. And I kept burning money, and I kept just hemorrhaging time and effort and money, just trying to figure out the process and nail it down to build something that I could replicate. And as I was doing it, it just hit me like, oh my goodness, like the only way this is happening is if I never stop doing it. And I know that sounds really corny, which is why I added in the Dream, Work, Achieve, because that was the exact progression of how I went about doing the line. Was it was a dream. The only way to dreams are great, but they are worthless if you don't execute on them and you don't actually put those dreams and ideas into actual work. Pointless. Don't even worry about it. It's not going to happen unless you put in the work. And after you do that, that's when you start to see the rewards. And it's not dream, work, reward. It's not dream, work, retire. It's achieve. And then that cycle starts over again. Once I achieve the ability to completely code a screen and burn a design into it, I got onto the next step of the process. It wasn't like well, I've got to the end of the cycle, I'm done now, and now I'm gonna kick my feet up and sip margaritas. It's not like that. So that's how the Never Stop came to me. One of the other designs for the first release was Pursue Your Passion, which again, that one came right to me because that's exactly what I was doing. Like I didn't have to look any farther than in the mirror to see that. I don't really know what I'm doing, but I know that I'm pursuing something that I really enjoy. I know that I'm pursuing something and I'm trying to make a difference in this world. And that passion is what kind of carried me. And I think passion is something that's huge. So I was like, yeah, put it on a shirt kind of thing. And it worked. So Pursue Your Passion. That's how that one came. Now, the cool one, Shatter Expectations. I don't think I've actually ever told this full story before. So I wanted one more design. I knew that every single company that I see in the fitness industry, and everyone has like very neutral colors, and this is still a principle that I use today. Everyone has very neutral colors, grays, blacks, whites, they have their place. I do them too. Grays, blacks, whites, or very earthy colors like army green, the off greens, the browns, the light browns, kind of the olive greens, those colors. They're very safe, very neutral, very non-offensive. I knew that on my first release I wanted one statement color, which happened to be Tahati Blue. I didn't know that at the time. And with that bold color and one color that really stood out from everything else, I wanted to have its own unique phrase on it, which is why that shirt is the only one out of the first release that sports the Shatter Expectations. And during that time, oh my goodness, I was throwing ideas against the wall. I think at one point I had like dreams to reality. I just had all sorts of ideas and I could not figure anything out, and it was driving me nuts. And then there was one Saturday, and I will not forget this, there was one Saturday where I literally went to in our apartment. It was just like one big open room which had like the kitchen and we had like a dining table. There wasn't really a dining room, but we had a dining table where I had my computer set up. I literally went there, I put my headphones in, and I remember just writing down every single thought that came to mind about what I was doing. And I did that for probably close to 2 to 3 hours. And I just had an entire notebook filled of, it was probably 30, 40 pages of every single line by line of one phrase or one description of what I was doing and what it meant to actually start a line off of not knowing what you're doing. And I probably had in the neighborhood of 100 to 200 different ideas. And after that, I went through that and I started narrowing it down. I did my first round of cuts and I cut out everyone that it was either too long or something that I didn't think would look very good. And I just cut all of them out. In hindsight, I would have saved this paper so I can show you or reuse some of these ideas. But as I crossed stuff up, I literally just took an Expo marker and scratched it out so I couldn't see it, so it wasn't in my mind anymore. And I literally set this entire day aside to figure out this design. All in all, this probably took close to 8 hours. So that's what went into the Shatter Expectations, is why it's so meaningful to me. So once I started making all the cuts, I eventually settled on, I think Dreams to Reality was one of them. There was one other that I don't even remember, in Shatter Expectations. And all three of them, I was like, okay, I like these three. Let's see which one will look coolest if I write it. So I spent the next few hours literally writing. I would take like 15 minutes and I would write Dreams to Reality as many times as I could in 15 minutes. Okay, timer up, review it, see, okay, I kind of like this, don't like that, don't like this. Go into the next phrase, spend 15 minutes, same thing. Repeat that pattern until I had all my designs done for those three phrases. And then it became apparent to me that I really liked the Shatter Expectations because Shatter was just about as long as Expectations and I could stack it and make a very good blocky design. I love blocks, by the way. So if you ever see like a square or rectangular like design, that's mine. Like, I live in that little box of design world. I love blocks. So Shatter Expectations is what I settled on. And during this time, I didn't get up. I didn't drink anything. I didn't eat anything. I didn't go to the bathroom. Like, I literally forced myself to sit down and create that design. And once I had it, I sat back and I was like, oh my gosh, this is the perfect embodiment of what I am. It's gritty because I don't really know what I'm doing. It has a meaning behind it. And more importantly than that, it means the world to me because I just spent my entire day doing this design. So is that healthy? Probably not, but that's how I do it. I don't go to such extremes anymore because back then I could take 8 hours and focus on that. Now I can't do 8 hours and focus on one design. I've learned to kind of speed the process up a little bit, but it's the exact same thing. Like when I was redoing Shatter Expectations, part of the way that evolved was it went from being super gritty to a more refined, but still that grit feel to it, because that's where I feel like we're at with the company. I feel like we have progressed a little bit. I've kind of got my feet under me, and I kind of feel like I'm on my way. I'm not 100% there yet because there's always going to be some grit, which is why it's still kind of got the gritty marker feel to it, why it overlays the expectations. And that was honestly what led to redoing that design, was I felt that as a company, we had moved forward and my design should reflect that. So it's always, it's stacking improvement on top of improvement, and I feel like more than anything, more than the meaning behind the phrases, more than anything, I want my designs to convey I want them to convey an emotion or a feeling. Which is exactly why I needed to update with the company, which is why when we get to that next tier, the design's probably going to update. And for the people that don't like that, that's just life. I mean, like, I'm sorry to tell you, but life does not just sit around and wait for your permission to change. It keeps evolving, and you can either keep up with life, or you can sit and watch it pass you by. I mean, you can be the radio and complain about how bad this new invention, the television, is, or you can try to figure it out. Or you can sit there and do nothing and let the radio completely be destroyed just like it was by the TV. And then, I mean, the TV is not the end of the line. You've got the internet, which wiped out the TV. You've got AR and VR and voice and Google Home and Alexa that are going to come in, and I don't know if it's going to happen or not, but that appears to be the next wave of what's on top of the internet. But something will come that's going to knock the internet out. And if you're not ready for it, you're going to get left behind. That was but the same principle applies with this line, is you've got to keep moving forward. I feel like we have to keep moving forward, or we're just going to be eaten up. I haven't been selling shirts for 3 years now just to be eaten up, and on the sole fact and principle that I wasn't willing to take a risk and try something new. So once we have, there's a long-winded discussion of the actual design work with the Shatter Expectations as the example. So once I use that mirror and I look at myself and I've got the design, typically we have the shirts picked out ahead of time, and I've got this design bank on my computer that literally has all my ideas that I would like to put on a t-shirt, or stuff that my friends have sent me, or anyone on our team that they've sent us, and I've got it there just as like a backup. So like we've got a new logo coming out in April, which is Defy All Odds, and I've had that there for a while, but it's finally got to a point where I think it would look good on one of the shirts that we're doing. So typically the whole reason why I got to that was we typically have the color of the shirt picked out, and from there we just manipulate we figure out what designs will look good on stuff. So like, for example, let's see, like the V-necks that we're getting ready to do for May. We didn't want to do like a huge front print on the V-neck, especially for our first V-neck. Usually with our first item of anything, we try to keep it relatively simple, very minimalist branding. So we've got a very small chest print on the V-neck since it's our first thing. Same with the women's leggings. They're gonna have a very simple just logo print. Same thing with our hats that are coming out. They'll have just a very simple logo on the hat, on the panels. But once, that's the whole purpose of the design bank, is to save everything, and then once we figure out what color shirts, we'll stick the design and see what looks good on there. And then from there, now what we do is once we have the t-shirts, we have a certain range of inks colors that we use, and we can expand the line of colors that we use, which we do, and we are continuing to do. That costs a little bit of money since ink isn't cheap. So we try to say, okay, we want to stay in this parameter, we want to use these colors inks, which is why in the very beginning we only use black and white, because those are the cheapest colored inks, and those are what, I mean, they're just the cheapest. So once you start adding more pigments to them, they start getting a little bit pricier, which is why it took us a little while to add the gray, why it took us a little while to add the scarlet red, the pink, the lime green we're looking at now. It took a little while to do that. The other thing that we have to consider when doing designs is how many colors we want to do. And in the beginning we didn't have the means to do that, but now that we've kind of upped our process, we have the ability to do 2 colors, like this shirt, like the hoodies for you podcast listeners. It has the scarlet red, "We Will Forever," and then in block letters it has the "Pursue Resiliency." We can do 2 colors now. So then from there it's literally just I'll mock up 5 or 6 different items with different colorways and see what pairs together well. And it's a lot of trial and error, and I email it back and forth to our team. And I think we got May knocked out, and I think we were on V6. I think it took 6 tries of going back and forth between the 5 of us to figure out what we want to do, what colors we want to do, how we wanted to pair it, and all of that good stuff. So once we do that, I mean, the printing after that, that's where the design work stops. There's really no restrictions on transparencies in the actual screen printing process. I can pretty much get anything to fit. That's where the design process stops. So I hope that this gave you a little bit of insight into what the design comes from. It's not a super complicated process. It's more time consuming than anything, which is why I think it's cool that it all goes back to my whole job as a creator. My job as this brand is to bring you guys something unique that you can't get anywhere else. And that's how I think about it, is I have a responsibility to design the coolest looking shirts with the coolest looking colors that you can't get anywhere else. Like, that's just my job. And if I don't do that, I feel like I let you guys down. And that's something that I hold myself accountable to. So James, I hope if you made it this far, man, I hope that this answered your question of how we come up with the designs, how we go through the color wave process, and all that good stuff. So I appreciate you asking the question, and it just really means a lot that you are listening to the podcast, and I really appreciate that. So thank you. You guys are the best.